I'd like to bring on Dr. Pandora Hope from the Bureau of Meteorology. Pandora, please get into your car and join us on Central Stage. Just to remind everyone who's speaking this morning, we do need to keep to our time zones as well. Thank you so much.
Good morning or good evening if you're joining from overseas. I hope you can hear me. So I have some slides. Will they be presented now? There we go. So I've just the joy of working from home here in Melbourne, snowy Melbourne, is that I can also work late at night talking to the Europeans. So I got off a call at about midnight last night, so hopefully I won't fall asleep in this next 7 minutes. So I was thinking about the information that I can bring on the weather and climate to you today, and think about how you might like to incorporate climate information in your planning. So obviously, be informed, and that's what I'll talk to you about today. I'm sure you already are. I'm sure you're already across everything I'll present to you this morning. But during this presentation, I'd like you to consider scenarios that stress your system. Perhaps they might be high impact but low likelihood weather or climate events. And also consider the external factors in this space. So it isn't just you on your own that's influenced by climate or weather risks. It's also the climate risk of your suppliers and buyers, the government policy changes at all levels, and also the estimation of your risk by insurers and lenders. And on the final slide, I'll talk a little bit more about where you can get more guidance and more focused guidance. Next slide, please. So if we think about the many timescales that you can look at for this sort of information, and starting in the bottom left, you can look at the long-term record, the last century of variability of weather and climate affecting your system. And that can help you characterise your current climate risk exposure and also inform what might happen in the next decade or so. And from there, you can certainly use all the guidance and information from the Bureau of Meteorology looking at the weather forecast over the next 10 days and the sub-seasonal to seasonal forecasts to really inform your operational tactical decisions as you move forward. And then moving into your future climate risk and looking at the projections in the coming decades out to the next century, depending on the lifetime of your investments. Next slide, please. So if we take a step back and look at the global temperature changes over the last 70 years since 1950, and you can see here a pretty clear pattern, and overlaid on that is interannual year-to-year variability. In the red are the El Nino years, so when the Pacific gets very warm, and of course we're right on the edge of the Pacific, so that affects our weather and climate as well. And you can see that generally those El Nino years are warmer than other years, but altogether they're getting much warmer through time. So this is the real basic signature of the landscape upon which you're planning your climate and weather risk. Next slide, please. Looking to Australia, the pattern is very much the same. So we've seen that temperature increase of a little more than a 1 degree over the last century on average, and that varies a little bit place to place. Looking at the northwest of the country, we've seen strong rainfall increases there, and the temperature increases haven't been as great. But this is something that really we must plan for in our consideration of all our decisions. Next slide, please. Going forward from here, on this slide we've got the average annual Australian temperature from 1910 right through to 2100. And how do we get temperatures in 2100? We use global climate models, and they simulate the weather every day for hundreds of years in their own world, their own variability. But we can force those climate models with lower levels of greenhouse gases or higher levels, depending on the scenarios we think will play out in our global community. And these results are in 2013 was our highest annual average Australian temperature on record until last year, and now it's 2019, and you can see that the Paris Agreement for the 1.5 degree warming is where we kind of are sitting not too far from now. If we carry on with stronger emissions, we can get to some really crazy temperatures. And recent results from the latest climate model simulations are showing some even warmer temperatures. And they simulate clouds a bit better, but there's still some other questions with those. So they're plausible, but perhaps, hopefully, less likely futures. Next slide, please. And I talked about the rainfall increase in the north of the country. We can also see a rainfall decrease across much of the south of the country. And this is the last 20 years relative to all other 20 years. And you can see in the deep orange, there are some regions that are the driest in our record. And we have confidence that there is a climate change signature behind this change. So this direction of change is something that will be embedded in the distribution that we're drawing each new year of rainfall from, and so they'll generally be drier than they were at the beginning of last century. And how do we know this? If we look at the next slide, these are the projections from those climate models of rainfall change for our winter. And in the brown shading, you can see where the climate models all agree on a decrease in rainfall. And in southwest Australia there, you can see a decrease of about more than 20%, and all the climate models agree. So this is a very strong and consistent signal, and we're quite confident that this is an aspect that will contribute to our rainfall going forward through time, that we're already seeing. And finally, here are some places that you can get further information to inform your weather and climate risk. Certainly start at the Bureau of Meteorology website on all timescales, weather, past climate, and also new emerging results, such as at the very bottom there, we have the hydrological projections that will be being released at the end of this year. You can also contact me. I think Vieco Maki is here today as well, and come and talk to us about establishing a project with us to give you a bit more guidance. And you can access all these other great websites for your region as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Hope. That was illuminating just to see exactly what is projected to be the future.